1. Hi everyone, it's Karen Williams here, the book mentor, and today I'm really delighted to be interviewing Mary Nonde. She is the author of this book, Awaken Your Intuitive Vision. Now, Mary is a creativity coach, she's a feng shui practitioner and a movement art therapist. She's developed her vision board process, and that was around about 10 years ago, I think it was, when she brought it into place, and she's helped 1,200 people over that period to create vision boards. And then a couple of years ago, she approached me to get her message out there into a book, and we've been working together on that over the last few years. Now, like many of our authors, Mary has an important message to share, but also a story that's behind it. And I know that's one of the reasons why she wrote it. So Mary, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, you're welcome.
So let's start by telling us a little bit about your book. What inspired you to actually put your head down and write it?
Yeah, well, it was really interesting because it was a little bit in two parts, because I'd been running with my work a little while. I'd got a website together, and somebody said you had to start writing blogs and newsletters, so I thought, well, I'll start doing that. And I'd been doing that for a few months, and then one morning I woke up and I thought, Mary, this is time to write a book. It's time to write a book about the work. And coincidentally, a friend introduced us, you and me, a couple days later. And she didn't know I'd had this idea to write a book. She saw your webinar advertised, and so I joined you. And so, I liked you and signed up. So that was a sort of you could say more of a left brain inspiration as to why I would write the book. And I remember we got together and we got the plan down, and in that lovely hip hotel in London with all those baubles hanging from the ceiling and all those books on the side. But I still didn't quite get motivated to get started. I didn't have the real inspiration. I didn't realize what was missing. And until I came down to your author's journey, one of those evenings down in Portsmouth. And as I sat there in the room, and we went round in a circle, and people were sharing what they were intending to write, and they all had these zippy titles to go with it, and I was feeling really deflated as it got round to me, because I was just writing about my work, so that was that. And on the journey going home, my friend who I travelled with, she said to me as we were driving back from this long day, what has your vision board ever done for you, Mary? Which it kind of makes me laugh now, because I think of that Monty Python line, what did the Romans ever do for us? But at the time I felt like throttling her. I felt really just gutted, because I had felt deflated from that little bit from the evening. But the next morning, I let it go. I didn't react to it. The next morning I woke up, and I do morning pages every morning, longhand writing. And I realized I poured out over 8 pages what had happened to me over the previous 3, I think it was about 3 years by then, and the ways in which my own process had resurrected me from a situation in which over just a few months I had just lost everything of material value and consequence almost all at once. And I think, so I was writing to my friend telling her what it had done for me, but I realized I had the motivation behind the book, because if it could, and it did, that process get me out of that deep hole I was in, it helped me find a way through it when literally everything had fallen apart. Now I couldn't sit and plan my way out of it, but the vision board, the images I put on the vision board created a thread that was to lead me out of this crisis into the promised land, and eventually, a few years later, to be able to write the book, and to write it from a different place, because of what it had done for me. And of course it then made me realize, well, if I had that story, if that was what was going on, what about the clients I'd worked with during that time? And you were encouraging me to get some case studies. And so as I gathered those, which I did very early on, I realized that this process that I enjoyed delivering was actually very, very powerful, and was powerfully working below the scenes to help people find routes through difficult situations they couldn't think up the answers for. No. So
I'm just thinking the vision board that I did with you a couple of years ago is still just to my left.
Is it?
Just underneath my flip chart.
I hope it's not on the ground. I say to people, don't
No,
put
it's not
precious.
on the ground, no. But the process you do is, it's more than just creating a vision board. It's very much going inside, because I remember when we started working together, I went to one of your workshops to experience it. But it's very intuitive. That's why I suppose it's called your intuitive vision, isn't it? It very much goes inside, rather than just what we think. Oh, I want a Ferrari, I want a horse, I want a holiday in the Seychelles. It's more than that. It very much goes internal, doesn't it? And I think that's the thing that makes you and also your book different, Mary.
Well, I'm very much the sort of intellectual foundation for this way of working came from my degree, and my master's degree in somatic arts psychotherapy. So there we were looking at ways of exploring through the right brain, the unconscious, subconscious a little bit, and even the superconscious in mind, intelligence.
Yeah.
So that's what I brought through in the vision board, in the intuitive vision board. I'm not after people finding things that the left brain knows already, what it thinks it wants and should have to be happy. I'm all about parking that and finding ways to drop into that open field of the right brain to get ideas and inspirations from a different place. But it's also why the process, which I describe, as you know, in the middle section of the book, I go through the process step by step that I take people through on the workshop. But it's also why that takes 4 to 5 hours, because I want to make sure that people have made that shift into the unfamiliar territory of using the right brain for finding answers, through a series of exercises which allows them to descend down through, if you like, as you said, inside, so that they come up with answers from a different place. Before they make the vision board, so it's it's a very kind of it's an intuitive process. It's not a way that we're very accustomed to working, and trusting that we can let go, not interfere. That's always the thing. And I find we're working with people. I ran a workshop at the weekend, and just that left brain wants to get back in there, and
of course it does,
So
can I put you on the spot a bit here? I'm going a little bit off piece with the questions that I sent you. Can you give us some examples of some of the people that have gone through the process, maybe some of the results, some of the things you've shared in the book, or even other things that have come up in workshops since you published?
Well, as you know, I've got the case studies in there, so as you are putting me on the spot here, let me try and think of
I'll look through it and give you some ideas if you need me to.
There was nobody had been through quite a crisis that I had been through. So it was more the people. Okay, here's an example. I worked with somebody, and she and her husband had got to coming up to retirement. They knew they wanted to move to the West Country, but he was deep in the throes of a corporate job. They were living in Beaconsfield. They had a nice home there. And the whole way of him leaving that job, finding a house in the West Country, selling their own, seemed like too many things that needed to happen. And they couldn't see a way to do it because his health wasn't very, very good either. So in making the vision board, she actually plotted out, it turned out, not only almost exactly the house that was not what she was imagining. She would look at the board with this house with these very grandiose gardens and a maze going through it and waterfalls and things, and say, well, that's not the house we're going to live in, we can't afford that. To the fact that 6 months later I visited her in Cornwall, and the whole thing had just been plotted out on that board in a way that was incredible, really, even down to some very small detail. So it's almost like the board allows us to access precognition. It's almost like we have that capability too, but it plotted a way through, and then outer circumstances in life seem to transpire to work in alignment with that. So husband suddenly had the opportunity to volunteer redundancy. So as soon as that had happened, they shot down to the West Country. There was the home that had been there waiting empty for 2 years for them, you know, and
Perfect.
so on and so on. So there's a, you know, there would be an example.
So many stories of things.
Yeah.
I think it's just, if you try and plan too much and have too much of an idea of exactly what you want, it's less likely to achieve it. But if you really go dig deep, there's all sorts of things that might pop up. And yeah, it's fascinating the people you're working with and the lives you're changing through this book, and also through the workshops you run.
Well, I think it brings in a dimension that we're not aware of on our own. And it's of a way forward in our life, which I call, you know, a vision of a way forward. So it's not just about what we've thought up already. Something else, it's like some other intelligence is working with us. So it doesn't randomly throw things at us to do on our board. It's taking into account our propensity, our skills that we may or may not have. And therefore it's really extending our boundaries, you know, in a way that we might not if we tried to plan it out.
Of course.
You know? Yeah. So it's very exciting. Yeah.
So let's take you back to your book writing journey. What would you say have been your biggest challenges after having that day with me and actually getting the book in your hand and actually, you know, getting it on sale? What have been your biggest challenges on the journey?
I think for me, and the big challenge was that I had to do it all on my own. And so I didn't, that's just the way it was, you know. I didn't have a partner that I could lean into, and I didn't have a nice supportive family backing me, you know. I had you, Karen, but so what that meant was I had to be really disciplined to, well, when I was at the height of writing last year, when I got back onto it, hold down a full-time job. I took a maternity leave, and so I was working for the first time in, I think, since I was in my 20s, on a 9 to 5:30 job, and then coming home, using my holiday to take long weekends to write. So that was...
It shows dedication and commitment to do it.
With you breathing down my neck. I used to think, I got to speak to Karen on Monday, so I better get something done this weekend. So that was challenging. It was challenging. And then before that, because our journey together was about 3 years, wasn't it? There was a whole year where I just couldn't write. I wasn't, not that I didn't want to write, but the outer circumstances of my life wouldn't allow me to write. As I was kind of recovering from that situation with the hole I'd fallen into a few years prior. It meant in that particular year I moved house 3 times, so I couldn't settle anywhere long enough to write. And I felt that I was worried but you reassured me. But I was worried I'd lose the thread in that time. And I just probably want to share that, because in the event, when I came to write again, I found that because I've had what I had to deal with in that time, somehow I was stronger, even stronger, and my writing was stronger. And, you know, some of the clarity I brought to what I was writing about was better, I think. But it was difficult, that putting that down.
Well, sometimes it's a richness of our experiences, and I do find that with some clients. You know, some clients do it really quickly. Some clients, for whatever reason, life gets in the way, and that's just the way it goes, isn't it? Life gets in the way. But I think all of our experiences bring us to where we are today, and they add that richness to the book, and richness to what we can share as human beings, and to inspire other people as well.
Oh, absolutely.
I think probably the clarity also, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there, but the clarity, so when we worked together on the day we mapped out the book, it's evolved hugely since then, hasn't it, into the, you know, the 8-step process that you've got in the book, which flows so beautifully through with the different eyes. That's all I'm going to say. People need to get a copy and they'll find out a little bit more. But it, you know, it just takes people on that journey, and the illustrations as well probably wouldn't have happened if you hadn't really sort of had time to really think about what you wanted to create with it.
Oh, it's interesting about that. I mean, the eyes, people might be thinking the eyes, but we know it's the other eyes.
I need an extra hand.
I mean, interestingly, the structure that we did come up with in the Hip Hotel, you know, was definitely useful, and was running through, it did run through the book. But the way in which it was treated in the end, or how I treated it, it definitely evolved, and yeah, that wasn't, you know, it was, I don't quite know what I want to say about that, but it wasn't quite how we started out.
But everyone's got to start somewhere, and I think sometimes it's just about having that extra pair of eyes, so someone's seeing it from a different point of view, because someone like yourself, you're in it, you know it intimately, you know your system, you know your process, you know how you do it intuitively, and actually sometimes it just helps to have other people's input into, you know, how to get it out, and also not make assumptions about what people know as well.
Well, I think I found, you know, when I got to the point I'd actually completed the manuscript, or I'd completed it, and the first stage then was when I handed it over to you. So this is the first time anybody had really, apart from snippets that you'd read, you know. And that was your insight then into how I'd written it, and how to move the first few chapters around, and create an introduction, and take something from the beginning and put it at the end. I have to say, between us, I think that was some genius going on there, you know, because it really made the book. It did. It allowed me to see how to finish it in a slightly different way, and to bring a final story in that I couldn't work out. I couldn't have got there on my own, I wanted to say. So I was really, grateful for that input.
Yeah, and then sometimes it is about having, there's a couple of things I talk about that need to be in the book, and one of the things is the hook. So when people do open the book, it grabs them, it draws them in straight away. So if you're thinking about Amazon Look Inside, or someone picking it up at the book in a bookshop, you want it to draw it in through the cover, through the back cover, through the introduction. But equally, you also want to have a great call to action at the end. You know, what do you want people to do after reading it? So if you've got workshops, I was talking to a client about this earlier, who's in the almost editing stage, and actually having that, some people read the book and that's all they needed. They can go through the process absolutely fine. But some people know, how do I work with Mary? And unless you tell them, they're not going to take any action, are they?
That's right. Actually, you said something there. I realised that the vision board had helped me, because the vision board, I make one every year, and I had one that was running alongside the particularly intense writing stage, and it was somewhat to do with the content and the design, because if you'd asked me at the start, how did you want this book to look and feel like, I would have no idea at all at the start of the process. And by the time I was getting ready to do the design brief, and I was referring to my vision board. It was fascinating that 6 months before I had images on there that were, and colorings that were going to help us enormously, or help me in giving the brief to the designer to, and that's where the illustrations came from. Because I didn't have that intention at the start to include these beautiful watercolor illustrations, but I had about 4 or 5 animals on my.
I'll have to share a couple.
Oh yeah,
there's one of them.
Armadillo.
So that's one of the eyes.
Yeah, and then the giraffe. Oh yeah,
my giraffe, of course.
Your giraffe.
Oh, here we go. Here's my giraffe. Which incidentally was part of, well, when I did the workshop with Mary, it was a metaphor that came out of that, which, I've always been reminded of.
Yeah.
Not quite sure where that's going, but I'm looking forward to doing my next vision board very soon as well.
Yeah. So that giraffe, and I'm reaching across, of course, I turned giraffe into T-shirts.
It's great having more products off the back of it.
Yeah.
I love the giraffe.
I love it. I mean, I did them with the word awaken on and far-sighted intuitive visionary, but I also did giraffe on his own. So, but that was interesting because it wasn't all laid out at the beginning, you know, and I'm absolutely delighted with the way the book looks and feels as well as reads. But I didn't know how that would be at all from the outset.
So how did we help you to create what you obviously are now very proud of?
Yeah, well, I think definitely the mentoring, our kind of journey together, which I found so invaluable, checking in with you every Monday, even if it was to say, I haven't written anything, or to say, Karen, I've written 2,500 words. I haven't got a clue what it's to do with fitting. You know, and after this had happened a few times, and you were so tolerant, you said, "Well, just put it to one side," and then, you know, at the end, I managed to stitch all those bits together. So that steady mentoring and checking in with you and getting the steers and helping me gently relate it to, because it's a business building book, obviously, is think about how that would sit about alongside my business was really super. Then I think it was very exciting for me when I got to the stage of the manuscript, and I'd worked all that time on my own, you know, over more or less by then, it was about 2.5 years, to actually feel like I was with a team of people, you know. I could actually talk to the designer and co-create something with Sam, and then working with Louise was wonderful as an editor, and Sandra as the proofreader. I mean, I really felt like, I was part of a team. And at that stage, it was very exciting because I thought, I'm getting help here, you know, it's not just about me who's never written a book before. There's a team of people who are supporting this. So, yeah.
Fabulous. And I think you just don't know what you don't know. And I think, you know, as the same client I was mentioned earlier, when I was talking to her through the whole process today, so, okay, what happens and when? All she needs to know is that somebody is making sure no steps are forgotten. Which is my job.
That's right.
It's amazing with everyone else to bring it all together and make it happen.
Yeah, and you do a great job.
Thank you. So I know it's early days, you know, your book has been out, so we're early April now, your book has been out just over a couple of months. What would you say have been your biggest successes to date?
I mean, what can I say? Tangibly, I'm really excited. I've sold about 100 books, which is, to think that 100 books are reading the message that I've put together is lovely. And alongside that, I've had some fabulous reviews. I've got 17 5-star reviews on Amazon, which is great, and they're each telling a slightly different, have a slightly different nuance to them. So those are all good, I think. But the main thing the book which is the platform really in writing it, has just given me that confidence, or just to realize how much I know in this particular sphere, if you like. And it's hard to put my finger on how important that is.
So it's a validation of your work and a validation of what you know.
Yes.
And it helps you get it all out of your head and actually into something tangible that you can give, you can, as a bonus to workshops or whatever you decide you want to do with it. I think that's great. It's when you sell a service and people can't quite see how it works, having something tangible that you can show them, share with them, for me is it's so important.
No, it's definitely, which is I think the book works beautifully alongside attending a workshop or going through the workshop process, because afterwards you read about it and you get write about the psychology behind it, and how other inventors and have you worked with the right brain and all this kind of thing. But I think that even having taught a lot of workshops, taught a number of workshops before I wrote the book, it brings something else for me when I'm teaching now, and it's like it's a confidence thing, or being able to face what I know already, which, as you said, was inside, but I was working intuitively, if you like, and not with that clarity, that awareness of exactly what I did know. So I think it's going to give me the confidence to take it to broaden out with it. And I'd like to work more with teams of people. That's my next skin, if you like. Teams in perhaps organizations or teams of people that need to work together. I've had a little bit of experience of that, and I wrote about in the book about working with a family and how they made a board together. I would usually encourage people to make their individual boards, but then make a collective vision board, and how much it's incredible what it brings forth, and nobody's giving anybody any instructions, So if you apply that into a team situation or an organization wanting to kind of break new ground, and here are the team members, I think it could be very exciting. So I'm certainly inspired to do that.
I was about to say, what's next for you, but is there anything else on the agenda, on the plan for?
I think I'm coming back. This is, yes, definitely. You talk about building the business alongside. I found that quite difficult. I think because I was working and writing, so how to carry it through into the business side of things and the publicity and the marketing of the book, I'm really only being able to dress properly now, and I'm enjoying the process. So I'm still at work on that, because having written the book has meant for me that I've wanted to change my messaging around the way I present the work and how that might sound and look on the website, and what I'm talking about in blogs and newsletters. So that's all filtering through, so I can see that will continue for a while, and I've yet to turn it into a talk and deliver it. Can you believe it? So that's on my agenda.
Well, I think marketing a book is a long-term thing anyway. It's not just about marketing it when you launch it, because I see a lot of people market it when they launch it and then do nothing with it. And I know you're also, you're working around also, the business and also promoting the book as well. So it's just how you bring it all together, and knowing that it's just one step at a time, especially when you've got other things going on. You don't have to, I'm running the book marketing challenge at the moment. You don't have to do everything at once, and you don't have to do everything you could do. It's just finding the right things that work. And it's just about getting it out to as many people as possible and just sharing that message. So, if you're resonating with what Mary's saying today, please do share the book. It's on Amazon and all good bookstores. I know you'll tell people in a minute how they can get hold of it, and from you directly as well. So the question that I really want to know, just for people who are watching this interview going, oh, I want to write a book, I can see the benefits, but it could take me 3 years, it could take you less. What advice would you give to other people who are embarking on this book writing journey?
Well, I say you've just got to do it. If you've got the instinct to write something, don't wait for the perfect moment or it's seeming like the perfect moment. You've just start writing. And I think that might be finding a good time or place where writing comes more easily for you, and making sure that you carve out that time and space for yourself. So for me, it's always been, go and make a cup of tea in the morning, Mary, go back to bed and sit and write in bed. That's my most creative time. I think it's just after having slept, your right brain is quite open and lots of ideas come through. So I'd even say just start writing, even if you don't yet have a complete plan, because with your help you can stitch it together. But if there's things that want to come through you, just write, because it's not just about the end product, it's about the process that you will go through as an author, as a person, with your work, that the book writing will bring you. So I'd say.
Any other tips? Anything else you'd share with people? And I do agree with that. Don't think, oh, I'll do it one day. Just get on with it and do it. So that's a big thing for me. It's just, otherwise I see this too often. I see people going, oh, I really wanted to write a book, then I saw someone else had written the book I wanted to write, and I think that's such a shame in that situation. So if you've got an idea, you really want to do it, it's just to do it. It's just to just to get on with it. There's never a right time, is there? You know that, Mary. There's never a right time, as you found on your journey.
That's right. What else would I say? Well, what I noticed was that maybe it's because I'm a particularly kind of creative thinker, so things don't come out of me in very not on demand or in perfect moments, and I found that the writing didn't either. So I would, as I was saying earlier, it would come out. It's almost like when the inspiration is there, even if you think you're supposed to be writing chapter 1, which is all about setting off on this journey, and whatever's there, if the inspiration is there, whatever it is that's coming through you, just get it down. Just write it down. Don't even stop to look at what's coming out, because there were some times when I was writing when I just didn't quite know what was emerging, or what I would do with it. And actually, in retrospect, those I think are some of the most inspired pieces. So I do think that's, again, it's that not waiting for a convenient moment, just write when you've got something that wants to be said, and not worry, but be concerned later as to where it's going to fit in the grand scheme of things. Good
point, very good point. And I think it's just being able to take those moments. So I've got, just looking at my desk now, I've got post-it notes, notebooks, Evernote, you name it, I've got notes all over the place. But then it's also bringing it together as well. So it's being able to react when the inspiration strikes, whether it's 11 o'clock at night, whether it's 6 o'clock in the morning, or at some other random time. It's just being able to capture those moments. I think or even audio. Certainly, there's so many ways now we can capture information. It's just making sure that we capture it at the right time when we're inspired to do so.
Yeah, no, I absolutely totally agree with that, and would do that.
Well, one thing I'm going to add, just something that's just come to me, is that sometimes you might have writing time and you might think, I'm not inspired to write. And actually writing, and I say this a lot to clients, writing isn't just about the time you have hand to keyboard, pen in your hand. It's also about the thinking time. It's about the going for a walk and letting things, mull through your mind, cogitate, and actually sort of eventually come out. And I find that certainly if I'm writing blogs or newsletters, sometimes I sit down to write it and then nothing's coming. And then I'm just about to go to bed, and then I suddenly write down a stream of consciousness, and it's done. I think it's just being able to react, as you say, to the right creative mind when things are ready, they will pop out when you're least expecting it.
Yeah, and I to add to that, I found for myself that I'm not very good at there's a meditative way of doing things where you meditate and you put the issue into the center and you wait. It doesn't work for me because my left brain saying, "Is it there yet?" Doesn't work for me. So I kind of, you're right. So I'm working on something. If I move, and when I say move, if I go for a walk or if I do some dancing or do some yoga, whatever, even housework, somehow that helps to metabolize it.
Yeah.
And when I least expect it, it's the answer's there. But not for me anyway.
Not forcing it, no.
No, it doesn't come. Yeah.
So thank you. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Mary, anything we haven't covered that you are desperate to cover today. If so, it's your opportunity now.
Yeah. No, I don't think so.
We've covered a lot of ground, I know. So most important question really is, how can people get hold of your book, Mary? How can they find out a bit more about you?
Okay.
And your workshops as well, because I know you've got quite a few workshops coming up.
Yeah.
In the south of Bourne End, which is where you are, and I know you're running one in the south of near me, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, down near Chichester. The best way is through my website. So through marynonde.com, which is on my book, right? This is in there. On my website is comprehensive. On the page called Media, or even on the front of the website, there's a button to click to order a book directly from me.
And I'm sure you'll sign it and give a personal message as well.
Oh, yes. And it's even got a giraffe bookmark.
Fabulous.
So that's a way of getting it, seeing what I'm about. And I have an events page on there, and the first group of events up are vision boards, and they're all clearly listed. So most of the open public workshops, I run in my hometown. But I'm not opposed to travel, especially if I'm coming down to the south coast. So yes, the events are there, and
if people can put enough people together, I'm sure you'll run an event for them anywhere in the country or even the world.
Absolutely.
So I've been to one of your events and it was really inspirational, and I'm so looking forward to revisiting my vision board and starting again and actually seeing what's going to be created for the next few years. So I'm really looking forward to that. So wonderful. So marynonde.com is where you can find out more about Mary, get hold of her book. It's available on all great bookstores like Amazon, etc. So thank you very much for joining me today, Mary, and thank you very much for sharing more information about your book.
All right. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.